Hi there, this is Bruno Bianchi from Spainguru.es, and this is the Spanish Non-Lucrative Visa webinar. Today is December 23rd, 2025, and we're going to go through a presentation. You can ask your questions anytime during it. Just chat in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen. Make sure to add a question mark at the end of each question, so I can easily recognize and also publish it for everyone else to read them. So let's go with the presentation. Today's webinar is structured in 3 parts: before the application, during the application, and after its approval. We're going to go through definitions, consulates, BLS office, immigration status, tax considerations, eligibility, documentation, and requirements. Also, we're going to talk about timings, the process of application, and how you arrive to Spain, how you renew, if you want to go for the long-term residence, citizenship even, and potential transition to work permits. The content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate requirements. A little bit about Spainguru.es. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014, so more than 10 years in the industry. My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone. We have wonderful reviews online on Trustpilot, almost 200 reviews, 5-star, almost 5 stars, and excellent reviews on Google. So definitely you are in very good hands. You can use Spainguru.es for free, 100% of it. I send a weekly newsletter every Monday and Tuesday for 15,000 readers, where I feature top discussions on Spainguru's Facebook groups and Reddits, also most watched video of the week, and blog posts, investigation blog posts, and so much more. So please join it. It is free and you can unsubscribe anytime. Also, you have a YouTube channel with almost 8,000 subscribers and more than 1,000 videos, half of them about the Spanish non-lucrative visa, so definitely relevant to you, and it's also free. You also have a blog with more than 2,000 articles and a huge community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members, from where the Spanish non-lucrative visa Facebook group is probably the biggest one out there, with 26,000 members as of today. And you can join it here. As I mentioned, you can use Spainguru.es for free. And how you can use it. It's a wonderful tool, first of all, because it's free. And second of all, because I am all the time updating it. You have the step-by-step move to Spain checklist, where you can see every single step that you need to do, starting 1 year before your move to Spain, with videos, with articles, with free tools, all chronologically ordered for your comfort and for your organization. So definitely worth looking at it. Of course, many webinars, 7 webinars, as you know, the Spanish NLV, but not only that, Spanish taxes, moving to Spain, the Spanish DNV, Q&A session with Ainhoa Manero, expert immigration lawyer, and Q&A session about financial planning with SJB Global Financial Planners in January. So definitely join those. All of them are free, and I always send a recording of those webinars. You also have Spanish destinations that lists the key factors in order to choose a place where to live in Spain. You have easily divided the map of Spain into 5 different regions, and you have the top 13 destinations for expats in Spain with updated links to the weather, to their cost of living, to their rental costs, and so much more. All very, very easy and condensed based on what people ask all the time. And also, you have guides for the Spanish non-lucrative visa. Very interesting about the NLV is that I have the NLV consulates page for each of these 4 countries: USA, UK, Canada, Australia consulates. And if you go, for example, to US consulates, let's choose New York consulate in this case, you will see that you have the links to the official requirements, but not only that, but also articles featuring first-hand experiences of people applying for this visa in that specific consulate or BLS office. For example, this one is from December 2025. Yes, and here you can read what this Spainguru community member wrote about the application, helping okay, others with tips and things that probably were not listed in the list of requirements, frequently asked questions, and so much more. So definitely Spainguru is a very interesting tool to use for free. Now, if you're gonna go with experts, at least I recommend you going with immigration experts and tax experts before you move to Spain. You can find immigration lawyers here, sworn translators, apostille services in the USA and UK, so much more. Healthcare, you have health insurance for the Spanish non-lucrative visa. My recommendation is an exclusive Adeslas agent. Medical certificates by Spanish doctors, UK doctors as well, all online. Tax advice for Spain filings, US filings, tax accountants, and so much more. Financial services, okay, financial planners, mortgages in Spain, bank and money transfers, so much more information right here. And for example, if you need to ship, you can get up to 5 international moving quotes, parcel shipping, pet transportation with discounts, learning Spanish for adults, and so much more. There's so much information and so many vetted partners. Most of them I have recommended them for several years. So definitely worth having a look. It is free to check, shop around, and see if anything is helpful to you. As I said, at the very least, engage with immigration and tax advisors before moving to Spain. They don't have to be my recommended ones. Of course, if you go with them, you're in very, very good hands, but please do it one way or another before moving to Spain. Now let's go to the NOV application. Let's start with before the application. What is the Spanish non-lucrative visa? It is a visa from Spain for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves and who don't need to work in Spain. It is regulated by the main hierarchy law called Ley Orgánica for 2000. This is the main law, okay? And the regulation of the law, which is a lower hierarchy regulation, okay, law, right? This is the one that just changed and took effect on May 20th, 2025, okay? But the main law didn't change. And that has very big implications in different things that we're gonna talk about. Now, as you probably heard, you can't apply for the Spanish non-lucrative visa from within Spain unless you already hold a Spanish residency and you want to modify it into a non-lucrative residency. If it's an initial application, you have to do it 100% from a Spanish consulate abroad, okay? Now, many of those Spanish consulates abroad use third-party services for the processing of their different visas. A visa could be a Schengen visa, okay, a student visa, could be a non-lucrative visa, digital nomad visa, right? So they may use a third-party processor for the specific non-lucrative visa. And you need to make sure to understand whether your consulate that serves the area where you live uses a third party. Normally is BLS International, which is an Indian company. Now, as I mentioned before, you can find dedicated pages for each of the consulates in those 4 countries, USA, UK, Canada, and Australia, on Spainguru.es with first-hand experiences. Now, it's important that you are a legal resident within the area that serves that consulate. You cannot choose the consulate, right? If you want to go to apply from another consulate, you need to move and legally become a resident within the jurisdiction of that new consulate. There's also another option. If you hold dual citizenship, for example, you're American and have Colombian passport, potentially you could also apply from a Spanish consulate in Colombia, or from Mexico, for example, if you have Mexican citizenship, right? So yeah, that's important. We mentioned that there is this third party called BLS International. It's a huge Indian company with operations in more than 60 countries, okay? And they not only do processing of visas for Spain, but also for other countries. For example, Germany, the German consulates in the USA use also BLS, and many more, okay? So it's important to understand that, for example, UK consulates, the 3 consulates, all of them use BLS. In the USA, most consulates use BLS, like Miami, for example, San Francisco, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, yes? But, for example, New York City consulate doesn't use BLS, and you have to deal with them directly. Another consideration, because we're going to mention it very often, is the Schengen area. The Schengen area painted in blue, is a group of 29 European countries that is internally borderless. That means that if you travel around within that area, you should not have to get an immigration control, okay? Which is good and bad, because sometimes you need the stamp in your passport or a record in a system proving that you enter Spain. Now, let's talk about the requirements for staying in Spain and in the Schengen area. British, US, Canada, Australian, and other countries, a specific list of countries, can be within the Schengen area for up to 90 days within a 180-day rolling period without needing a tourist visa. But many other nationalities do require a Schengen visa to enter the Schengen area as a tourist. For example, the Philippines. Now, if you want to stay longer than 90 days in the Schengen area, you will need to apply for a visa that will grant you the right for a residency in one of these Schengen countries, namely Spain, for example, right? Now, what is the non-lucrative visa? The non-lucrative visa is the paper that you get at the consulate with a validity period of now 1 year, used to be 90 days, to enter Spain. And once you are in Spain, after 30 days, you're officially required to get the residency card linked to that visa. In this case, will be a non-lucrative residency that doesn't give you permit to work in Spain, right? Now, since you can renew this residency up to 5 years, technically, and no more than 5 years, technically, this is called a temporary residency, okay? Because if you get a residency for more than 5 years, it is called a long-term residency that you probably heard of, right? So if you want to stay more than 90 days in Spain, you need to get a residency, okay? And the NLV is one of the options that you have. You have digital nomad visa, okay? You have ordinary work permits, etc., right? Now, important, if you have the possibility to obtain a European Union passport or any of the countries associated to the European Union, like Norway, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, etc., those associate countries, or you are the spouse of someone who holds any of these passports, there are better, easier, and cheaper ways to become a resident in Spain, okay? So EU passport holders, to put it simply, they have the right to reside in Spain, okay? But they have to register if they pretend to stay more than 90 days. If they want to retire in Spain without working, they need to have certain amount of money, which usually is around 7,200 euros. That varies by region, far away from the nearly 30,000 euros. This residency is valid for 5 years, okay? So you don't have to renew it after 1 year, 2 years, 2 years, okay? And it also grants you work permit. So it's absolutely much better than the non-lucrative visa or residency. Therefore, if you have the possibility to become an European Union passport holder, or you are married to one, this would be the way to go. Otherwise, if you're non-EU, the non-lucrative visa could be an option for you. Now, let's talk also about some tax considerations. The most important concept is tax residency in Spain. You become a tax resident in Spain, and when this happens, you must start paying taxes on your global income and potentially on the net value of your assets to Spanish tax authorities. Now, this will happen if any of the three conditions applies. The most common, first, if you spend more than 183 days physically in Spain within a calendar year from January 1st to December 31st, and the immigration status doesn't matter. That means that if you spend in Spain 2 months as a tourist, yes, and then you spend 4 months holding a residency during the same calendar year, if you are over 183 days, you would become Spanish tax resident. So you need to count every single presence in Spain, regardless of your immigration status. Second condition, if your main economic activity is sourced from Spain. And third, if your family lives in Spain. Another overview about the taxes. You have the income tax, okay? For example, pensions and Social Security are generally taxed in Spain. at progressive rates from 19% to 47%. If it's public or government, due to double taxation agreements, is not taxable in Spain. You need to check all this with a tax advisor, which I am not. There's also something called the Form 720. Once you become a Spanish tax resident, you have to declare the value of your assets and rights held abroad if those assets divided by category are over 50,000 euros. For example, you have 2 bank accounts outside of Spain, and each bank account has 25,000 euros in each in value. The whole category for bank accounts, therefore, is 50,000 euros. And then you need to declare in the Form 720 the existence of those accounts and how much money is inside of them. Okay, and you do this by March 31st the next year. Then another taxes that you need to have in mind: the regional wealth tax, which is a tax on the net value of your assets, which is regional. So depending where you move in Spain, you have different thresholds or no wealth tax in general. This is the case of Madrid and Andalusia, where there is no wealth tax. And then there is a national solidarity tax, which works more or less like the regional wealth tax, but it is nationwide at a much higher threshold of net worth of 3 million euros plus an allowance of 700,000 euros. Okay, so for example, if you live in Madrid and Andalusia, this is the wealth tax that will apply, the solidarity tax. But for example, in Catalonia, the threshold is 500,000 euros. So it's pretty low. In Valencia, it's 1 million euros, the wealth tax, the threshold. Okay, this is without allowances and deductions. Also, remember, and we mentioned before, that there are about 90 double taxation agreements between Spain and other countries. This includes the USA, UK, Canada, and many more countries. These agreements are in order to avoid double taxation. Therefore, if you're from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, you will not pay taxes twice on the same thing, right? And the way it works is that you will pay taxes in one of the 2 jurisdictions, and then whatever you have paid in taxes in that jurisdiction, for example, you pay taxes in Spain first, you will credit it towards the payment of your taxes in your home country, if your home country needs you to file taxes. This is the case of Americans who need to file taxes every year, regardless of where they are tax residents. If you want to know more about taxes, please join my Spanish taxes webinar. Next one is on January 7th at 3 p.m. CET, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and 6 a.m. Pacific Time. Now let's continue with the NLV, and let's go with the requirements and considerations for eligibility. First, when you apply for the NLV, they will ask you an address in Spain, where you're moving in Spain. Now, many consulates, they are happy if you say the province, for example, Valencia, Málaga, Seville. But some consulates, they have a strict view or interpretation on this point, and they want you to provide a rental contract in advance of at least 3 months. Okay, this is the case of, for example, Chicago, DC, I think Boston as well, right? And I heard also Houston, for example, but not, for example, LA, not Miami. Yes, and I have recently interviewed, like basically I published this video yesterday with the top 20 questions in 2025 to Ainhoa Manero, an expert immigration lawyer that I highly recommend. Here is the video. It's published yesterday on Spainguru's YouTube channel. And one of the questions was this: yes, what do you do with your clients when they ask you to provide a rental contract? And she says, I never do it. I never do it. And she explains it in the video, what she does to avoid this crazy interpretation that appears in no law. Second point, address in country of residence. As we said, you can only apply from a Spanish consulate abroad, but it cannot be any consulate. You need to prove that you're a legal resident within the jurisdiction of that specific consulate. For example, if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, you will show your driving license at the Miami BLS office, because Miami Consulates uses BLS as a third-party processor. Then prove sufficient financial means to support yourself and dependents if you're moving with spouse or kids, etc., have comprehensive health insurance from a company authorized to operate in Spain, or if you're a UK retiree, instead of a private health insurance, you can use the S1 form that will grant you access to the Spanish public healthcare system. Then have a clean criminal background check, show a medical certificate, which is a one-page document that proves that you're free of diseases that could have serious public health repercussions, like yellow fever, etc., etc. If you're moving with your spouses, you need extra certificates and new certificates of new marriage certificates. If you're moving with children, new birth certificates. You will potentially have to prove that you won't engage in any work or professional activities in Spain, and you do so via providing a letter of intent that not always is a requirement, but most of the time is also helpful. You have letter of intent templates on Spainguru.es, and you have also to provide sometimes school enrollment for your kids. This is the case of Houston, where we heard it. Okay, and again, these are strict interpretations that if you go with legal help, potentially you will be able to avoid. And you will have to provide photography, okay, of a certain size, or BLS, they will take the photography. You will have to pay the fees for each of the applications that unfortunately vary depending on which passport you hold. For example, Brits need to pay £560, and Americans pay little over $150. These differences can be very big, and all the applicants need to pay fees, like, for example, children will pay, etc., etc. Now, not only I have recorded a video yesterday with the top 20 questions from this year, the current year, I have 2 videos of 20 minutes where Ainhoa answers 43 of the top frequently asked questions, okay? But this video has a few months. You will see variations. We always need to be updated. So that's why I publish videos very, very often, because things change all the time. But definitely you can find that video too on Spainguru's YouTube channel. I have a question here. Someone who is asking, if you move initially on DMV and want to change to NLV after a few years, you have to leave and apply at the consulate, or can you change the type of visa in Spain? You can do it from within Spain. You are changing from one residence to another. And this is one of the questions that Ainhoa answers in my video from yesterday. Now, let's talk about the financial requirements 2025. You need to show proof that you have sufficient funds to sustain yourself and potentially your dependents. Now, this financial threshold is based on an index called the IPREM index, okay? The last index we have is 2025. It may change in 2026, but it is highly unlikely. Why? Because it depends on the new budget for the nation of Spain, and there is no political agreement in the last 3 years to update the budget. So it needs to have a new national budget in order to update the IPREM, and it's not going to happen in 2026. So this will probably very, very likely stay the same in 2026, but may or not change in 2027, right? So the main applicant is 4 times the IPREM index, the annual IPREM index. Okay, the IPREM index 100% is 7,200 euros, times 4 is 28,800 euros for the main applicant. And for each dependent is 100% of the annual IPREM, which is 7,200 euros. Therefore, if you apply as a couple, you will see on the right, the table, the second row, the main applicant is 28,800 euros plus 7,200 euros is the total of 36,000 euros in 1 year. This is the financial threshold for a couple, okay? And how do you prove this? Well, you have to show that you have enough savings or passive income, or a combination of savings and passive income, typically showing pension withdrawals, some rental income, and I put an asterisk there because rental income is considered to be a very unsafe source of income by many consulates, and also when you renew, depending on the region. And this is one of the questions in the video from yesterday. Dividends, funds available also by credit card, as long as you prove or you get a certificate stating that that credit is readily available without penalties and immediately, so liquid, right? So anything that is liquid should count, and anything that is illiquid doesn't count. For example, a home, an unsold home. If you're the owner of a home, you cannot use the value of that home in order to prove your financial threshold. You will need to sell it let's say, if you wanted to count. How do you prove that you have this financial threshold? By showing bank statements and documentation from your bank wherever you have the money, okay? And also some consulates will ask for tax returns. Now, something to have in mind is that in certain regions in Spain, they will ask you to show double the amount of the initial application, okay, in a 2-year period, right? So the initial application, since they will give you a residence for 1 year, you have to prove to the Spanish state that you have enough money for that year. But when you renew, the renewals are for 2 years. So some regions, they apply this criteria that you have to show enough money to sustain yourself in 2 years. Now, if you have applied with savings and you are living in one of these regions, then you have to have enough savings to cover the financial threshold for 2 years. Therefore, we say that in that case, you have to have double the amount for the renewal in these certain regions. Now, if you have passive income, recurrent passive income, then you calculate it in a different way. We're going to look at that. And these are some screenshots from Spainguru's community where they say, for example, depending on the region, they ask you for 1 year or 2 years of funding for the renewal. It says Valencia only 1 year, Alicante 2 years, Almeria only 1 year, etc., etc. So depends where you are applying from. We mentioned before that the IPREM may change if there is a new national budget. It always goes up. You can see there the progression per month since 2004, but it has stayed frozen in 2023, 24, now 25, and probably 26, okay? But imagine that you apply for the visa, you get it, then you go to renew it, and the IPREM has changed. The new threshold will be based on the new IPREM. So always count on that when you budget for your move to Spain. Another thing that we need to mention is that after May 20th, 2025, certain consulates, especially the ones in the US and in the UK, they started to ask for more certifications or certificates from the banks in order to avoid fraud and make sure that things match, right? So, for example, you need to show a certificate that shows that you are the owner of a certain bank account, you know, without deleting your last name or without deleting the full number of the bank account. They don't want to see that. They want to see everything matching, right? And probably the most controversial is that they have started asking for certificates that show the balance of the previous year of that bank account and also the monthly balance. And these certificates need to be issued by the bank, okay? The problem here is that most of banks don't issue these certificates, okay? And there you are in a catch-22 situation. Again, Ainhoa Manero answers to this in this video. Basically, she goes to a notary, opens a bank account online, the notary signs that these numbers are true, does the calculation in an Excel, the notary signs this, okay, etc., right? So this is, she explains it how she does it, right? So yeah, this is important. This is important because we've seen people that face some friction because of not showing this type of certificates. And you will wonder why they ask for this. Well, this is my own bank account in BBVA, big brick and mortar bank here in Spain. And I have ordered a certificate stating that whether I am the owner of my own account. And this is a screenshot of what I got on my mobile phone. So that wet ink stamp is also typical here in Spain, okay? Authorities expect that banks, etc., have a wet ink stamp. And also this have been an issue in certain consulates. But as I know explains in the video from yesterday, this is something that is becoming less and less problematic. But a couple of weeks ago, someone applying from Bordeaux, southern France, faced a denial because didn't show a certificate from the bank that had a wet ink stamp. Okay, so we still see these cases. So for this, you always have to be very careful and do the most possible in order to provide to the consulate the right information. Okay, so yes, let's continue. Yes, Very big question. Can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies? Long story short, this is the situation. This is not legal advice. I will just express and bring to your attention the situation for you. Okay? The situation is this. If you mention that you pretend to work, or you create the slightest doubt that you pretend to work or that you are working at a consulate, you will be denied. Ipso facto. Okay? Now, once you got your visa, okay, using savings, passive income, etc., and you are in Spain, and happen to get a remote work for a non-Spanish company, or you were doing this all the time, but you didn't show it, okay? I'm not saying that I recommend you doing this, not at all. You should go for the digital nomad visa, okay? And this is what I know says, but it is a gray area, and it is not illegal. And there is a Supreme Court ruling that supports if you are working remotely for a non-Spanish company, because the law about the non-lucrative visa is too vague in this point. Therefore, if you're in this situation, I know it doesn't see any problem, and we've never seen any problem. And me personally, I met a lot of people in this situation, and they never faced any problems. And you have YouTubers out there who did this and or are doing even this, and nothing happens because there's no communication between the tax authorities and immigration authorities. You will see people on Facebook groups saying this, but I never seen that in years. So, and also I know it. So this is the situation for this point. Now, the second thing to point out, and also underlining the difference between the consulates, Edinburgh formally permits people to work and get non-lucrative visa. But they say, as a caveat, that has to be a certain type of work of a certain nature, okay, without mentioning. But Spainguru community member mentioned that the spouse was working at the oil rig, flies every week, and they got the NLV for all their family. Also, Ainoa speaks about this in yesterday's video, where she says that she did NLVs for pilots, for example, who work every month for 10 days, go back to their country and then come back, etc. So depending on the type of work, if the consulate is aware of this, the nature of this work, potentially it could be a possibility. Now let's talk about private health insurance requirements. The next point. Unless you're a UK retiree and you use the S1 form instead, you have to get a private health insurance. Yet, not all policies are valid. It's very important that the policy has to be issued by a company authorized to operate in Spain, and that the policy has certain conditions like no co-payments. Many consulates also mention verbally reimbursements, no reimbursements, although it is a gray area, okay, depending on the consulate or the person reviewing your case. No waiting periods, so you need to be covered from the moment zero in which you arrive to Spain, and full coverage with big nuances in this one. So full coverage for any type of medicines, okay? Now, in 99% of cases, you need to pay a full year in advance to the health insurance company because they need the full payment in order to provide the necessary certificate of coverage that must observe a specific type of wording and needs to be in Spanish, okay? Let's go with the questions. Are my medicines covered? Typically in the US, they will cover a part of your cost of medicines, but private health insurance in Spain don't cover the price of medicines. You have to pay full retail price. Good news are that the prices are extremely cheap compared to your medicines in the US, for example. What should the health insurance start date be? There are different answers to this. The most common ones is that it needs to be active when you have the personal appointment, okay? But this is less popular than the second option, which is you have to guesstimate when you're gonna receive your visa start. And if your visa starts, for example, on July 15th, 2026, you need to start your health insurance on July 1st, okay? So the first day of the month in which your visa starts, so that you are covered for a full year, more or less, okay, once you are in Spain, right? So if you started earlier than that, people have faced some complications because they say, oh, you started now for the appointment, but after the processing, 3 months will go by, so you will be not covered for 12 months. When the visa starts, you will be covered only for 9. Okay, some people have to show a certificate saying that it will be automatically updated, okay, or paid, but some consulates put problems also because of this. So I tend to go for option 2, which is starting the same day in which you start your visa, okay, more. But as I said, this is not 100%. This is a nuanced question. Are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? The answer is yes, but they're expensive, and not all the companies provide compliant health insurance policies. You have the KV and you have Adeslas, as far as I know. So if you reach my exclusive Adeslas agent, he will be able to provide you with one. What if I have pre-existing conditions? And this is circling back to the full coverage condition on the top, right? The fact is that it will depend how serious the pre-existing conditions are. If you have something serious, like you had cancer diagnosed in the previous 5 years, unfortunately, you will probably not get any coverage. And you will have to wait to accomplish your dream to move to Spain as a non-lucrative visa holder, okay? But if you have something less serious, like high blood pressure, stuff like that, there is the option that the company who issues the coverage or the policy excludes those pre-existing conditions, but still are able to issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish that the consulate needs. Okay, but if you have any problem related to those pre-existing conditions, you have to pay the treatment out of pocket, right? Now, connected to this, can I pay into the Spanish public system? Good thing would be that you are covered by the Spanish system because there are no pre-existing conditions exclusions. They treat you for anything, right? And it is possible, but a year has to pass as a resident in Spain in order to go to get access via the Convenio Especial, it is called, where you pay 60 euros if you're younger than 65 and 157 euros if you're older than 65, and then you will be covered for your pre-existing conditions, okay? Still, you have to pay retail price for the medicines. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK and USA? The short answer is, if it's compliant, yes. But the long answer is I highly don't recommend it because there's a lot of problems in doing so. So it is much better to use a recommended private health insurance from Spain, okay? Because they have the right certificate of coverage in Spanish, they have the right clauses, etc., etc. And we have seen people who face denials because they thought they had compliant policies from their countries, and it doesn't make too much sense to risk that way. Can I apply with a UK S1 form if I am a UK retiree? Yes. Do I need a Spanish bank account? No, you don't need a Spanish bank account. But if you happen to have one, potentially you could pay on a monthly basis and still get your certificate of coverage in Spanish, but this will depend on the broker and the company, etc. That's why I said 99% of cases you have to pay a full year in advance. Can there be reimbursements? Gray area. Houston, for example, says no, okay? And any official in any consulate could say that this policy is not compliant because of reimbursements, okay? So be careful with that. Will I get a refund if I am denied? Big question here. That depends on what policy you are purchasing. You need to read all the policies papers and all the clauses, and this clause would be the cancellation clause. What happens if you want to cancel it, right? So in case of denial, for example, if you use my exclusive agent, he has a full refund policy if you bring a letter from the consulate saying that you were denied. No questions asked any other than this. No, doesn't matter the reason, etc. But some companies, they say that, no, I need the denial, and it has to be because of the health insurance, not because of any other reason. Or I will only give you back a certain amount, okay? I will deduct all the taxes and everything. I will only give you this amount, or I will not refund you anything, right? So be careful. That's very, very important, because if your visa gets denied, you need to have a favorable cancellation clause, okay? If you go with Spainguru's recommended agent, he has the best one, the best clause out there, okay? Which is basically, if you get denied for any reason, you get the refund. That's how it is. What are the top companies? All these companies are reputable and good. Adeslas, Asisa, KV, ASA, Salus, Caser, Sanitas, AXA, Mafre, okay? Depending who you ask, they will tell you they are super happy, or you will also hear horror stories. These are big companies with thousands and thousands of customers, okay? I personally, in my 21 years in Spain, I used 3 different Companies, I am pretty happy with all of them. Okay, I never had any problem with any of them, but you always hear some bad stories. Okay, and if size matters, notice that at Teslas it is by far the biggest one, probably the best price per quality value. Okay, value for money, with nearly 30% of the Spanish market. Second is Sanitas, then Asisa, DKV, etc. Something to point out is that many people were offered at BLS websites, for example, in DC and in Manila, in Philippines, to purchase a travel health insurance pop-up. They got a pop-up in front of them. It's like, oh, you're applying for this visa, get this travel health insurance. But it is very misleading, okay? Very misleading, because even those same consulates in their pages say that they don't accept travel insurance for the application of the non-lucrative visa, okay? So you will have to buy also the compliant health insurance. And so this is a very bad practice that I'm seeing, and people also report. So be careful with that. Don't get the travel health insurance for your non-lucrative visa. As I mentioned before, you can hire my recommended exclusive agent, Carlos Blanco. He has incredible reviews out there. And I think his advantage is that he's also an expert immigration lawyer. Okay, so he understands this process very well. He understands all the problems you may have, and he's seen it all, honestly. So cool thing is he also has start date extensions. Okay, so he can start up to 3 months in the future. And if you're getting close to that date, you can request another extension and he will give it to you. Okay, which is something that no one does. Most companies only do 1 month in advance. Okay, or with a cost they do most 2. Okay, but in general, you have to start them very quickly. So you are going to be very tight. So very good advantage there. Okay, and great reviews that you can read later on. But here I have compiled 3 of them. So definitely you are in good hands with him. If you go to Spainguru.es, you can find his contact right here. Let me see. There. You go to services, healthcare, exclusive Teslas agent, and here you can see everything, even videos. I went to his office, met all his team, etc. You just fill this form, and that's it. And you get a non-binding quote. It is free to ask a quote, and you get a free call just to discuss your case. Okay, and you continue potentially shopping around for other options. Okay, but that's a very, very solid one. Now let's talk about the medical certificate. Okay, this is health, but it has nothing to do with health insurance. This is a 1-page document. On the right, you can see the template that you should use. That should come in English and also in Spanish, okay? But some consulates will only give you the one in English. That has to have that specific wording without changing a single comma. This is very important, okay? Now, if it's only in English, you need to sworn translate it to Spanish. If it comes in English and Spanish and gets signed by the doctor in both parts, you don't need to sworn translate it, and you will save 40 euros, okay? This is important. Now, this document has a 3-month validity, so it needs to be valid when you submit the documents. Depending on the country, there are different ways to present it. In the USA, Australia, Canada, you just print this document with the doctor's letterhead, you make it signed by the doctor, put a wet ink stamp, the registration number, and that's it, okay? In the UK, the doctors can be registered with the Foreign Office. These are FCDO registered doctors. They need to be registered in order to sign these documents, because you need to also apostille it. This is only in the UK, okay? If they're not FCDO registered, unfortunately, the signatures is worthless, okay? So you need to use a FCDO registered doctor, okay? That's important. So there are also other options that I put here to help you out. Okay, so for example, we have healthcare here, medical certificates for Spanish visas. You have also, for the UK, an online service with a discount called ZoomDoc. Okay, you can use it. Or, this is for all the world, Spanish doctor certificate. Now, this is important to notice. Some consulates have a strict interpretation of this that doesn't appear in any rule or law that says that when the Spanish doctor certificate is issued, you have to be physically in Spain. So they will check your passport and see your entries and exits and check that. Okay, for example, this was the case of New York City, San Francisco, Lisbon, and Porto. Used to be the case of Manchester. Now Manchester accepts it even if you're not physically present there. The cool thing about using a Spanish doctor is that you don't need to translate it and you don't need to apostille it, okay? And sometimes your doctor from all your life and everything, doesn't want to sign a certificate that comes in Spanish. They want to take a bloods from you or urine tests, etc., and all that, and they don't want to sign the certificate because they've never seen it before. So this could be an option, okay? How you contact this doctor? You just go here, you fill this form, you tell which consulate you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you, yes, my certificate is being accepted, or in that consulate or not, etc., etc. Okay, so this is something that you can do as an option. Okay, so frequently asked question here. My doctor won't sign my MC certificate. What can I do? Change doctor. Okay, my doctor is not FCD or registered in the UK. Is his certificate valid? No, because you cannot apostille it. How do I know if the Spanish doctor certificate is accepted at the consulate? You contact him. It's absolutely free. Say which consulate you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you. Okay, and then if you want to continue, you arrange a Zoom call, ask you a questionnaire, and that will be enough to issue the certificate that you need with a 3-month validity. This is a table that summarizes everything that I just said that you can watch later in the recording that I will send you to your emails. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel and ask any questions in the comments below. Now, let's talk about the clean criminal background check that you need to present. This is the document that usually takes the longest to obtain. ACRO in the UK, FBI background check in the States, okay? And it must be squeaky clean for the previous 5 years, right? And always you need to apostille it and sworn translate it. Now yesterday I asked Ainhoa Manero about the validity of all these certificates. She says that all the certificates for the non-lucrative visa have to have a 3-month validity, not 6. Should not confuse with the certificates for the digital nomad visa or highly qualified worker, because those go with another law. But all the certificates for the non-lucrative visa should have a maximum of 3 months validity. Okay, we've seen some exceptions she mentioned for the marriage certificate or birth certificate where they extended it to 6 months, but generally count on 3. Okay. Now, the FBI background check is important that when you apostille it, you apostille with federal apostille. You don't notarize it and apostille it with a state apostille. That is a straight denial. Always get a federal apostille. Okay, and if you need to know about the process, just search Spainguru FBI background check apostille, and you will get a step-by-step how-to guide on how to do it. Okay, and as we said, 3-month validity. Frequently asked question, am I still eligible with records on my background check? Depends how serious they are. If it's a small thing like DUI or smoking pot outside of university 25 years ago, that's nothing, okay? They will not consider that, and normally it's not a problem. Now, if you have something more serious, okay, like blood crimes, fraud, economic crimes, frequent things, etc., you could face a straight denial. If you're in this situation, either you go for the expungement process in your own country to delete those records because enough time has passed, or you contact with an experienced immigration lawyer that you can find on Spainguru.es who can do certain work in order to prove that that record should be deleted as per the views of the Spanish authorities. Okay, am I still eligible with a no live trace in the ACRO? The answer is yes, but the Spanish authorities are requiring an extra document or report from the police where they express which type of record is underlying that no live trace record. Can I expedite the background check federal apostille? The answer is no, but if you use Spainguru's private service, which is more expensive, normally the public way is $20, but it can take between 5 to 7 weeks. But if you use the private services here, Immigration Apostille Services USA, you can find for as short as 10 days. Okay. So yes. Now, next point here. Where can I have my fingerprints taken? So in the US, you go to a USPS office, yes, and they scan your fingers. And normally during the same morning or the next day after, you'll get a digital version of your FBI background check. That would be it. Okay. Now, many people have problems with their fingerprints because they are illegible. Last week, I was interviewing a couple from Michigan who moved here to Malaga, and the lady in her 60s, she said that they tried 30 times in a USPS scanner, and it took them like 3 months or 4 to finally get to a authorized channeler to do it. Okay. In fact, I have information about this, and I have links of potential companies that potentially can help you go through this problem. Okay. And I was feeling so bad for them that they had to go through a nightmare because they basically they didn't ask me. and they had this problem. Okay. So be careful with that. If you're in this situation, don't forget that I can help you out. You can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.es, or just search on Google like Spainguru illegible fingerprints FBI, and you will find information. It's right there for free. Okay. And this is a few screenshots of people stating that the ACRU, if you pay for the premium service, is taking only 2 days for fast track, or 2 to 6 weeks normally if you pay less, if you're not in a hurry. In Canada, it's taking very short time. That's good news. And now we're going to go through a different issue that people always mention. Okay. The proof of not working. And can I not quit? Okay. Can I continue working until my visa is granted? This is a big question that unfortunately has no straight answer. Now, let's talk about the proof of not working and why we call this visa generally the retirement visa, because many people who choose Spain to retire use this visa because they don't need to work anymore. So that's a straightforward case. So you show proof of a receipt of a pension, okay? And that will be it. No more questions are asked. You're proving that you're not gonna plan to work, okay? Let's also put it another way. Another common question is there an age limit to apply for this visa? This is the thing. There's no age limit. As long as you are 18 years old and plus, you can apply for this visa. But younger people face a problem and older people face another problem. Younger people face the problem of extra scrutiny because the authorities think that it will work. And older people face the problem of not being able to get a compliant health insurance policy. Okay? So these are the problems that we see in the extremes of this, let's say, age thing. So if you're still working, and this is one of the questions that I know I answered yesterday in the video, and in the UK, you need to provide the P45. Basically, you quit, you get the P45, and you submit it. In the US, resignation letter or termination letter from employer, both translated and notarized. And if you're freelancers, in the US, notarized affidavit promising not to work. And in the UK, a letter from HMRC and accountant stating have ceased trading and deregistered for self-employment. This is important. So should I quit before I get this visa? Watch the video from yesterday. I know I explains it quicker than me. Is renting out a property considered a job? Now, size matters here. If you have 1 or 2 properties and you're renting out long-term, it is passive income. But if you have 30 properties and you put them on Airbnb, you have a business, okay? If you're somewhere in the middle and you have doubts, the officer reviewing your case could think that you have a business and you're working in this business, and this is active income and deny you. So people suggest to appoint a property manager in that case just to make sure that you can prove that you're not part of the rental operations. Is investing in stocks considered active income? No. Can I volunteer while on an LLV? Yes, as long as you don't get paid. Now, people asking all the time, I don't want to quit my job unless I'm sure I get my visa. And this is a very, very real and true question, yes? And also people in the States, they have their health insurance provided that they're still working. So they don't want to end their health insurance coverage before they get their visas, not only because of making some more bucks before they go to Spain, right? So it's a huge deal for many people to continue to work, right? So depending on the consulate and the person reviewing your case, you have different outcomes, right? In the UK, generally they want the P45. They want you to quit. This is the truth. But some people, they presented a letter from the HR department instead of a P45 if working up to the last minute, where they promised to quit if their visa is granted, okay? But they were or not accepted. It's a bit of a potluck, it says Pauline when she talks about this. The consulates in the States are different, okay? The DC consulate seems to be more open to the situation, but Houston less. For example, this person said that it's promising to quit their job in the future, but before the date they want their visa to start. And the consulate didn't want to take their documents. Whereas this couple, they did the same. They presented or they submitted their resignation proof in the future, but before the visa start date, and a sworn statement of no working in Spain, and they got their visas, right? So depending who you talk to, it's going to be one way or another. The best you can do is quit, okay? But unfortunately, some people don't have that option, right? San Francisco, end of October, accept the documentation showing a termination date after the appointment date, provided the applicant legally attested the ceasing all the work. Okay, so San Francisco was also good. Another situation about this worth mentioning is that a Venezuelan national applied for the NLV in Buenos Aires, where I'm from originally, and got the visa denied because the consulate Googled this person and saw that in LinkedIn had some activity. So they denied this. And the reason for denying was the activity on LinkedIn, which is not clear, but they Googled this person. So many people say that Spanish consulates don't have the right to Google you, or they will not do it because it's illegal, whatever. They do it. And this is the proof. And this person appealed this decision, went to Madrid court, and Madrid court said that the consulate was right to deny this person the NLV. So extremely careful with the consulate and mentioning or creating the doubt, or not convincing them enough that you are not working, that you are working or pretend to work in the future, right? Now let's talk about marriage, birth certificates, non-married couples. Married couples will need a valid and updated certificate. I learned yesterday that maximum 3 months. Sometimes they say 6 months, okay? So always remember, this is not official requirements, and I'm not an immigration lawyer. Always check the official requirements in BLS, in the consulates, in English and Spanish, etc. Children will need new copies of the birth certificates, and by copies I mean new originals, okay? And again, 3 months validity. Non-married couples can also apply, but they will need to prove that they have a relationship. Now, if they are legal partners, that will get recognized by Spain, have a strong case. Now, but if you don't have a legal partnership, you have to prove that you are stable partners. The best way to do it is that you prove that you have at least 1 year of cohabitation. Having a child together strengthens the case, but this is not enough. Okay, you need to be living together, and you need to provide certificates like joint accounts, joint rental contracts, blah, 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 all that, okay? And always the official certificate needs to be apostilled by the authorities who issued them. For example, you got married in California, is the state apostille. You got married in Cyprus, is the Cyprus apostille, okay? And sworn translated if they're not in Spanish. What happens to adult children, so children who are over 18 years old? Unfortunately, until May 20th, 2025, you can no longer have them as dependents. They need to apply as main applicants. This was one of the changes that changed to the worse, okay? Here you have Article 61 of the regulation with the underlinings in red that express what I just said. We mentioned also sworn translations many times. What is the sworn translator? What it makes it different than just an average normal translator, okay? Well, the sworn translators are appointed by and only by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They pass a hard exam to become certified, and they get a unique registration number that you can check online. Their translations are accepted by all Spanish institutions. There are official translations, including the Spanish consulates abroad. The translations are done remotely, so you don't need to send paper documents overseas to get your translations back by snail mail. You just send the digital copy, a PDF attached to an email, and ask the sworn translator how much you're gonna charge me, when you will deliver, if you need urgent service, depending on the complexity of the document, depending how fast you want it. they will charge you one thing or another. But the typical cost is 40 euros per page, roughly, for the typical documents for the Spanish non-lucrative visa. Can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? The answer is no. They need to be sworn translators, okay? Can a sworn translator work with several language pair? The answer is no. They only work with English, Spanish, Spanish, English. This is a language pair. Or French, Spanish, Spanish, French, right? Now, if you need different language pairs, also have the solution for you. Let's go to Spainguru. Because many people think, oh, you only offer sworn translators in one language pair, English, Spanish. No, it's not true. If you go here, the first one, you get any language pair. Any. From Italian to Spanish, you select Spanish, European. From Italian, for example, could be, etc. Right? From Dutch. And you want a sworn translator, 31 euros, 50 per page. Okay, you upload the document and you have it. This is the solution. Okay. What comes first, apostille, then sworn translation? Okay, this one is interesting. A lot of people don't sworn translate the apostille. They just sworn translate the official certificate. Okay, and they save 40 euros. But 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, they denied one person because they didn't have the sworn translation of the apostille itself. So it's not only the certificate, but also the apostille. Many lawyers who have appointed or in-house sworn translators in their offices, they will sworn translate everything, the certificate and the apostille themselves too, okay? In order to be on the safe side. Maybe that's too expensive, especially for bank statements, but some lawyers do it, okay? Some people just choose what to do. In the case, for example, there is Bob, who is moving to San Sebastian, and he was in videos on Spainguru's YouTube channel. He asked the consulate, because he had the apostille in several languages from Germany for his marriage certificate, and he asked the Miami consulate whether he had to sworn translate the apostille, and the consulate said no. Okay, so he got an official answer in that case. So you have to decide if you're going to take the risk or not. And this is the case for San Francisco BLS in November. Yes, the appointment immediately requested a rush translation from the official translator we've been using. Yes, because they had to have the apostille itself officially translated. So this is very, very interesting. Okay. Now let's talk about the bank statements. Do you have to sworn translate them? This is another big one. Okay. Most people, almost 80%, they do not sworn translate them. There are too many. It will cost a lot of money. Prefer not to do it. They provide them in English, and they pray that the officer that morning has had a good morning, okay, which they usually have, okay? Some people choose to sworn translate only the summary pages. Some people sworn translated everything, especially the ones who got the packages with lawyers who have in-house sworn translators, so it is covered. Some people have banks who provide them in Spanish. This is the case of Chase, for example, in the US. Okay, so that's how it looks for bank statements. You have to choose and ask the people in Spainguru's community, what did you do about your bank statements at this consulate? And was it after May 20th, 2025, when they supposedly became, or supposedly not, they became a little bit more picky about the financial proof, okay? So yeah, we're not gonna talk about this, okay? But always remember, you can find many, many videos, more than 500 videos about the Spanish non-lucrative visa on Spainguru's YouTube channel, and they're free to watch. I publish roughly one video per day. There's a Q&A session at the end after this presentation that you can ask any question. Always remember to include a question mark at the end. And if you had to leave earlier, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a button there in the green bar on the top, red button that will redirect you to Trustpilot, where you can leave a review, and it will make my day, my week, my year to leave a nice review out there, because it really, really helps me, motivates me, and also helps others find this content if you find it useful, which I'm sure you do if you're applying for this visa, because we go pretty much in depth about this visa, and hopefully we'll keep you updated for anything that happens in time. So now let's go with during the application. We're going to talk about the process. Okay, so very important. All family members must apply. If you're going with your dependents, most consulates who especially work with BLS, they have in-person applications, but some consulates, they only do by mail. For example, this is the case of Panama, right? Used to be the case of Melbourne. Now they changed to in-person applications. They all are tending to go to in-person applications, okay? And a big update is that now the validity of the visa is 365 days. Used to be 90 days. Within then, you had to enter Spain, but now it's 365 days. This changed this year. And yeah, talking with Ainhoa from Stern Abogados, she was pretty prudent. Like she was recommending still, we're changing system. This can bring some problems in the renewal. If you can, try to enter within the first 90 days, even if your visa validity is 1 year. But now, yesterday, she was more optimistic about this. She's seen people who enter after the initial 90 days. No problems were happening at the TA appointment or tarjeta residencia or residency card, okay? And also very important here, you see here on the right, it has to look like this, like mult, which is número de entradas, multi numbers, because you want to use this visa to go in and out of Spain during that first year. It can take several weeks or months to obtain your residency card, and potentially you want to travel out or in Spain, and this multi-entry and not a single entry is very important because it allows you to use this visa to go in and out of Spain freely, okay, the amount of times that you want. Common mistakes to avoid: not checking specific consular requirements for BLS offices, and also internal requirements. What are internal requirements? This is when you read people's first-hand experiences at specific consulates where they are required things that are not online, okay? And that's why you need to follow the first-hand experiences, ask questions all the time, go on Spainguru, read about the first-hand experiences there, etc., watch this webinar, and stay updated, okay? Wrong documents, applying with wrong documents or expired documents, yes, they have certain validity periods. Wrong chronology, this is starting with the easy and fast stuff at the beginning and then leaving the hard stuff at the end. I remember an interview I had for a couple who got married in Trinidad and Tobago, and they thought getting an apostille for the Trinidad and Tobago marriage certificate was going to be fast, and it actually took very, very long, and that was a problem. They should have started with that at the beginning. Wrong health insurance, yes, this is also a big one. Happens very often. People who uses their origin country's health insurance, or they go with reimbursement clauses in a consulate where they don't want to see that, etc., or buy a travel health insurance from BLS when it shouldn't be. And then that's the big one. Say that you plan to work, or not enough proof that you're not going to be working, or you don't convince them enough that you're not going to be working. So that will depend on the person in front of you, will depend how old you are, and you know the type of risk that they think you have of coming back to work. Now let's talk about timing. Usually you can start 6 months before submitting the documents in the USA and Canada, and in the UK could go faster for straightforward cases. Most consulates, remember, will retain your passports while they are processing your visa. US applicants can get a second passport, okay? It is quite easy and doable. 3 weeks ago, I interviewed an American lady in Estepona in Malaga. You can watch the video on Spainguru's YouTube channel, and she said that she got a second passport, okay, just to travel while the visa was processing. But in the UK, it's not easy at all, or even impossible, okay, to get a second passport, right? So some consulates will allow you to sign a form and ask to keep your passport, but it is not working seamlessly, okay? Manchester has this form, but I hear different stories about it, so don't count too much on that. And it could be a problem because Manchester, for example, now is taking many, many weeks to issue the visa, more than 20 weeks in some cases. It is absolutely insane. Question: does this change to 365 days validity affect the insurance requirement planning at all? Or should the health insurance start with a visa start date, even if you haven't moved to Spain yet? I don't think it changes anything. I mean, you got your visa issued, right? This is the important thing. you got your visa issued. And then when you enter Spain later on, it's not important related to this, okay? What it is important is that you don't get health insurance coverage gaps, okay? For the renewal of the NLV and also for the further application of the long-term residency or citizenship, if you have the possibility to do it. So yes, if we break down these timings for documents preparation, allow 2 to 3 months, attending appointment 3rd month, allow a couple of months just to get the appointments for the consulate. Then you have to wait for the approval. It can be as fast as 1 week, and it can take more than 3 months, as we said for Manchester. 10 days period they will give you if they want extra documentation, okay? So if you know that you have submitted something that is wrong or invalid or expired, whatever, make sure to have it, okay? Because when they require you to send it back, they will only give you 10 days to do it. You can choose the visa start date in a 90-day window from the application date. But this is changing because of the new regulations, but this is the case even as of today, but it can evolve, okay? And once you enter Spain within the visa validity period, you will have 30 days officially to obtain your residency card from a national police station, and this is called the fingerprints appointment. Someone said, you can ask for the visa to be valid for up to 3 months in advance. However, the difficulty I found was finding a health insurance company who will work that far out, as most only do 2, and I could safely say that most only do 1 right now. But the solution, as I said, you could use my exclusive as agent who can extend it 3 months plus. Now let's look at the application timeline of this process. Okay, and of course, here you can have things overlapping. Depending on your situation, you could start with one thing or another. So don't quote me on this, but this hopefully will help you see it in an illustrative manner. First, you find which consulate you can apply from. Second, you check all the official requirements. Third, you start with the hard stuff before, usually the police checks. Next, you go for the medical certificate that has a 3-month validity. Okay, and also the police checks, usually a 3-month validity. You will apostille everything. You will sworn translate to Spanish, everything that is official. For the medical certificate, you also apostille it, okay, if it's a UK doctor, FCDO registered. If you are a UK retiree, you will get your S1 form, or you can also use the private health insurance that everyone else has to provide, a compliant health insurance. You will start 2 months before your intended date to go to the appointment to try to get an appointment. You book it, and then you attend it at the BLS office or at the consulate. Then you submit everything after your meeting, and you wait for the processing. Could be 1 week, could be 2 months, 3 months, you name it. Then you will collect your visa, or maybe you receive it in your home, depending on the office, etc. And then, this I should update it, it's not 90 days anymore. Now it's 300 days, 365 days of visa validity, where you can enter Spain, okay? And then once you enter Spain, you officially have 30 days to get your residency card. To obtain the residency card, many people mention this key step, which is obtaining an empadronamiento. Once you are in Spain and you get a rental contract, you go to the city hall and you register that contract, and they will give you a proof of address called empadronamiento or padrón. This proof of address will be needed in 90% of police stations. They will ask for it in order to issue the residency card. Okay, remember that. To obtain the empadronamiento, you have to have the permission of the landlord, and second, usually, at least 6 months duration of the contract. So shorter term contracts will not work for that. Getting appointments, this is a huge one, okay? So there's a lot of people in the groups complaining about this, asking for tips, and this person gave a fantastic tip for San Francisco. This may or not work for others, but yeah, this person was checking late at night, early morning, and suggested that you had your credit card next to you, desired arrival date, city and province, picture and printer ready. The user secured an appointment in November. So yeah, basically, you can ask for several tips to the Spainguru community members who have done it, because it is possible. Another way to see this process is a Gantt chart where you can see the time frames for each of these tasks. So the first one usually is getting the police checks, marriage certificate, and birth certificates, if applicable. You get them. Remember, there is a validity period of 3 months, sometimes 6 months. Okay, and it needs to be valid when you submit the documents. Then you will sworn translate. If not in Spanish, you will apostille it. Then you will go for the financial documents from your bank, etc. Medical certificates, okay, with a validity period of 3 months. Health insurance just before the appointment, by giving enough time to get the certificate of coverage. Many people, they get it until the last moment, and then they don't get the certificate of coverage in time because they got bad promises from brokers saying like, yeah, I get you the papers in 24 hours. And then it's not 24 hours. Then it's 10 days and it's too late. Yes. And this has been happening in the last day. I've been some comment in the group. Okay. So be careful, time this correctly. And then once you submit everything, you go and you wait for the visa processing. Then you enter Spain with your visa in the passport, and then you will have 30 days to get your residency card. Okay. These are some things that are changing now, but I'm not going to mention them because it's too long. Something that a lot of people ask, okay? They want to sell their home before they move to Spain, or they're asking, should I sell my home or keep it and rent it out to someone? Well, it's important to understand that if you become a Spanish tax resident and you sell your home during that same tax year, wherever it is your home, you will have to pay capital gains tax to the Spanish authorities. So there are ways to mitigate this tax or to not pay it, because you can use the 100% of the sales proceeds into buying a new primary residency, and many other conditions, and that's being careful. You can basically avoid capital gains tax under meeting those conditions. But the best way you can do it is by timing the way when you move to Spain. And basically it is selling your house in a different tax year in which you become a Spanish tax resident, right? So for example, you sell it in December 31st and you move to Spain in January 1st, different tax years. Second option is you move after July 2nd. There's only 182 days left in the year, okay? Basically, that calendar year spend less than 183 days, and you will not be a Spanish tax resident if you sell the home during the same calendar year. But be careful, if you sell in January and then you move to Spain later in the year and you spend 183 days, it is retroactive from January 1st. So that sale will be a taxable event in the eyes of Spanish tax authorities. So be careful with that. You have a lot of articles on Spainguru's blog. Okay, you can search Spainguru, pension, taxable, USA, Spain taxes, pension, social security, 401ks, Roth IRAs. All this you can find on Spainguru.yes with their videos. Now let's talk about after approval. Remember Schengen? Well, there's an important thing here. When you fly to Spain, you can either enter Spain from outside of Schengen, which is great because you will get a stamp in your passport or a scan of your face and fingerprints via the new EES system in the airports. That now I've been reading that people are waiting for 3 to 5 hours to pass it, unfortunately. So this is just being rolled out now, exactly during Christmas time when people travel. So pretty messy, unfortunately. And another option is you fly from outside of Schengen to another Schengen country different than Spain, and then you go to Spain. This could be a problem because if you fly, for example, from New York to Frankfurt, and then from Frankfurt you take a train to Barcelona, you will not get a stamp on your passport once you enter Spain. Yes? So you will have to prove that you enter Spain on a certain date, because when you go to your fingerprints appointment, the national police will want to know when you enter Spain, not the Schengen area, Spain. For that, you have to sign. This is a recommendation, okay? People use boarding passes, gas tickets, and they say, yeah, the policeman was cool. Some other people said the policeman was not cool, and he told me I had to get out of Schengen and come back. Yes, so that can happen. So the best way to avoid it is getting a declaración de entrada. So you go to a national police station, close to the train station or inside it, or inside the airport, or next to the border where you crossed, and you make it signed by the police and you make it stamp, and that's your proof of entry into Spain. Another option, another recommendation is once you come to Spain, you get a Spanish SIM card, depending on your phone, or eSIM if your phone doesn't allow SIM cards. So basically, you want to be able to receive SMS from Spanish authorities because they love to send you SMS when you go through all these procedures, Empadronamiento, fingerprint appointment, etc., right? And you also want to keep your phone from your origin country to be able to authenticate yourself for the use of your bank account, etc., etc. The 2FA messages, you want to have that too. So you need to keep both working. I have articles about this depending on if you're from the US or from the UK. Also, recommended, open a Spanish non-resident bank account until you get your TA card. You count as non-resident, you will pay a little more, but it's good to have a brick and mortar Spanish bank, okay, to pay your utilities, rent, etc. Obtaining your empadronamiento, I mentioned it, and obtain your residency card officially after 30 days. But unfortunately, almost nobody can do it. And you can see here people in Valencia, they're waiting for 4 months to get an appointment at the police station, or even 5 months in Alicante. Is it strictly necessary to have an empadronamiento for the TA appointment? And is it strictly necessary to get your TA card within 30 days? The answer is no to both of those questions, because there's no appointments and people can, as you can see in the screenshots, wait even several months to get the TA card. Cool thing is now you have your visa and your passport with multi-entry and with a 1-year validity, and you can use that to come in and come out. You don't need a regreso authorization if you have a valid visa with a multi-entry. Second thing is, most police stations, the bigger they are, the more they know that the empadronamiento is not technically the only proof of address that you need to show. You can show a rental contract. You can show an Airbnb receipt, okay? But the problem is that many people don't find appointments at big police stations. They end up in small police stations, and those small police stations are not updated, and they want an empadronamiento. And that's the story. That's why 90% of police stations will ask you to have an empadronamiento. So it's best if you have one. Now let's talk about renewal process. The renewal starts 60 days before the expiration date in your TA card. So it will depend when you enter Spain, you will get the start date. So from the start date of your TA card at 365 days, so 60 days before, you can start a renewal date, right? And the financial requirements for this, as we said, is double the amount of the financial threshold in a period of 2 years, yes, and it will be double if it's savings, yes, and when you have to renew, you will get 2 years renewal for the first renewal after 1 year of entering Spain. You get 2 years, and then you renew again for an extra 2 years with a total of 5 years. And after that 5 years period, if you are eligible, you can go for the long-term residency. There's always a lot of controversy because a minimum stay requirement of 183 days was added to the Reglamento de Extranjería. And this is one of the big questions that Ainhoa has answered yesterday in the video as well, because she says that this minimum stay requirement is not enforceable because there is a Supreme Court ruling stating that they cannot add this minimum stay requirement into a low hierarchy reglamento or bylaw, but into the higher organic law for 2000. This is where they should add it, but they don't, they can't do it because there is no political agreement, because there's more Congress control, and they cannot do it, okay? But the previous minimum stay requirement of 180 days from the previous reglamento was absolutely deleted because of this Supreme Court ruling. So we're in an ambiguous situation, and she says that if they deny you because of this minimum stay requirement, there is 100% chance of winning, okay? Therefore, this is not enforceable. And also, a lot of people think that you have to become a Spanish tax resident in order to renew your non-lucrative visa, which is not true, because the tax year is calendar year and the immigration year is natural year. So they may or not overlap. You can play with both, right? We're only talking about the renewal of the visa. If you want to stay for the long-term residence, you have a minimum stay requirement or a maximum time outside of Spain of 10 months in the previous 5 years. So you need to comply with those if you want to go with the long-term residency, okay? That's why it's so important that you go with an immigration expert in order to design a specific strategy for the long term in Spain, because they will make you aware of all the different requirements that you need to comply for your objectives in Spain. Now let's talk about a case study so that we understand how the calculation is made for the renewal. Imagine you have a couple. They apply for the visa initially for 36,000 euros for the couple, yes? And they are living in a province like Alicante where they require double this amount for the 2 years. So 36 times 2 is 72,000 euros. They need to prove that they have in the next 2 years. Imagine that the main applicant has a recurrent passive income of 30,000 euros pension annually. That means that in 2 years, that counts as 60,000 euros. Excuse me. From 60,000 euros to 72,000 euros, they have to prove that they have 12,000 euros. They can prove it by showing savings, for example, or extra passive income, dividends, potentially rental income, but it is not widely accepted because it's considered to be unsafe, also mentioned by Noah yesterday. Yes, because they say that maybe the tenants stop paying, right? This actually happened to a friend yesterday. She rented out her house for 4 months to a French couple, and after 4 months, the man lost the job and said that Spain is no longer interesting for them and they're leaving, right? So this is an example of why it is unsafe compared to a pension. It is supposed that a pension paying your pension, like a government paying your pension, it is a safe thing that they will not stop paying, right? Documentation requirements: ongoing private medical insurance coverage or public healthcare access, updated passport copies, and no police records is important, and also Empadronamiento for the renewal, 95% of cases. Let's talk about minimum stay requirements for the different visas. We said that for non-lucrative visa, it is an ambiguous situation, but it is not enforceable because of Supreme Court ruling, 183 days per natural year minimum stay. It's actually a typo, should say natural or immigration year. If you want to go for long-term residence, you cannot be outside of Spain more than 10 months in the previous 5 years, and no more than 6 months in one single time. Now, there is the option of a third renewal for 2 more years, but not all the regions allow it. For example, Galicia doesn't allow it, okay? And if you're going for the Spanish passport, if you're holding a temporary residency, and this is usually the case of people who hold Ibero-American passport or Filipino passport who have the 2-year fast track. That means that they can apply via legal residency after only 2 years in Spain instead of 10. They cannot be outside of Spain more than 90 days each of the previous 2 years before applying. So that's important. Those countries are the ones in red here, only 2 years of legal residency in order to be eligible to apply for the Spanish citizenship. Now, let's talk about the common pathways to transition to work permits under a non-lucrative residency. Okay, these are not the only ones, but these are the most common. Okay, and also yesterday, I know I talked about them. Yes, you have cuenta propia. If you have your own business working as a contractor, you present a business plan, and if they accept it and you go through different requirements and they accept it, you can modify after 1 year to cuenta propia. Okay, and then you can work in Spain for this project. Second one, after 1 year, if you get a sponsorship from a company for a normal work, imagine working in a bar or as an English teacher, after 1 year, you can go for cuenta ajena, okay, which is working for someone else. If you get a highly qualified worker, it's not here in this list, this is under the law of the digital nomad visa. You can actually do it even before the first year, and the process will only take 20 working days, labor days. So you have different pathways. And the most controversial one is you can transition to digital nomad visa from non-lucrative residency and vice versa, okay? But the controversy about going from NLV to DNV is that in order to get your digital nomad visa, you need to have been working the previous 3 months, which is controversial because under the non-lucrative residence, you shouldn't have been working, right? Still, the authorities are not saying anything and they are doing this transition. A recommendation before going through these common pathways that require at least 1 year of residency is that first, you go through your non-lucrative residency 1 year, You renew it, you get the renewal for the non-lucrative residency for the next 2 years. And once you have the renewal and permit to be in Spain for 2 years, then you go for the modification to a work permit. Okay, because if something goes wrong, at least you have the renewal of your non-lucrative residency, right? Now we can stay in touch for anything. You can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.es. Here's my email. Please join the Facebook group, watch the YouTube channel, read the articles, join the community, use the tools, yes, like the webinars, the step-by-step move to Spain checklist, the newsletter, and of course, if you need to engage with my recommended professionals, please go on Spainguru.es, you go to Services tab or press that red button called Get Expert Help, and you will be in good hands. And if you have any doubts, remember, you can always send me an email. Okay, and I will gladly help you out with everything that I can. Okay. Now, are there more questions here? You want to ask any questions? Let me see. There's one question here that I didn't see before. If you move to Spain on an NLV, could you modify, change it to a DMV? Okay, I already answered. The answer is yes. I don't see more questions here. All right, so we made it till the end. Thank you so much for joining today. Remember, I will send you a recording to your emails very soon. I will upload to Spainguru's YouTube channel, and you can comment with your questions. Please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. Everything helps. And also, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There on the top, you have the link. Okay, and yes, it's 23rd of December 2025. I just can't believe that we made it till the end of this year. Tomorrow is Christmas for everyone who's celebrating. I wish you the best. I wish you a great Christmas, hopefully with your family, with your friends. And I wish you wonderful times and a great beginning of 2026. I think the next webinar is going to be already next year. And yeah, definitely, it has been a wonderful year with a lot of you. And yeah, stay in touch. And you have me here for anything you need. Of course, I'm going to take a few days off and travel a little bit with my family. Maybe I'll be a little bit offline a few hours, but I tend to be very often at least with my mobile phone. So yes, I'm pretty much connected a lot of time, I think. Unfortunately, I just can't. I just love this too much. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. And stay in touch. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful Christmas. Bye.
Oh, and one more thing. Apparently YouTube says you're gonna love watching this video right here. I think you should watch it.